Hi, and welcome to this tutorial video on how to annotate. I'm sure that this is a refresher for many of you, but I want to make sure that we're clarifying and adding to your understanding of how to annotate. Because annotating is more than just highlighting and underlining. In this class, if you highlight and underline only, your annotations will receive a 0. Because annotating is really adding your commentary. It's a visual recording of your reading experience. Your recording should show your interaction with the text, how you're processing information, and how you're putting content together to form your own ideas. So step one in annotating is really that initial understanding piece. You're keeping track of title, author, characters, conflicts, plot details, and everything on that list below. You're trying to situate yourself in the reading and come up with an initial understanding of what's going on, who people are, and any other plot pieces. In Romeo and Juliet, my first and read through and my initial understanding comprised of questions like, who is Romeo? Which family does he belong to? What is the conflict with his loving Juliet? Those are kind of the initial understandings, questions that I would ask myself as I'm reading, and my margin notes would be answers to those questions. After we have our initial understanding, we're working towards unlocking meaning. And this asks you to analyze the text by looking at word choices and language in order to explore theme, character development, and author's purpose. You've probably looked at this before, but kind of for you math people, a good formula is detail plus detail plus detail equals conclusion. We put together two details from the Lahiri piece, the fact that her mother wrote Ma inside that cover, and how the books were in Bengali, and her mother put the books away from the young Lahiri, to reveal something and think about something about Lahiri's relationship with her mother. And we talked about that disconnect and that lack of access to the part of her mother that she wanted kind of the most, to her reading life. She felt like she was missing out. So we put those two details together from the text to assume and to come up with an idea about Lahiri and her relationship with her mother. Another piece that you want to do as you're reading and annotating is making connections. You want to look for connections between you and the text, comparing and contrasting it to things you know in order to deepen your understanding of what you read. So these connections don't have to be to you personally, like the time that you read your first book, but maybe drawing on your background knowledge of whatever the content is. What does this connection tell you about relationships in general? I saw this theme of friendship in another text, which seems to suggest that people in general, and here you would write the theme. So those making connections, again, not just personal connections, but also the connections between your background knowledge and other texts, other classes, other pieces of information that you know. This is probably, I think, the most important piece, and that's asking questions. Lots. It's important for you to be confused. If annotating is a recording of your reading experience, then it should be recording how you're processing information, the questions that you have along the way. But these questions shouldn't just be what or what's happening here. You should also be trying to answer them, recording your ideas of what you think is happening. So sample questions might be, why did this character behave this way? And then you follow up with, I think he did because. This is you working through the text and processing. Another piece that you'll want to look at is examining author's craft. You want to evaluate the effectiveness of a writer's craft or literary elements and explore how they convey meaning. So things that you can look at are character construction, physical appearance, personality, speech, behavior, thoughts, feelings. All of those that go into developing your idea about a character. Literary devices, metaphor, imagery. We'll go over more of these as the year comes, but it's important here again that you not only identify this is a metaphor, but write down your thoughts of why the author is using a metaphor in this place. What's the importance of the metaphor? How is it adding to your understanding of the theme, the character development, plot device? So these are some tips to get you started annotating. We are going to be reviewing and doing quite a bit of annotating in this short story unit. You will be writing a lit-based essay at the end, so it's important that you're thinking about the material as we go and recording your thoughts so that you have that information to use in your lit-based essay at the end of this unit. Next, we're going to take a look at the first short story, A&P, and get started on our annotations. So let's take a look at your homework assignment for tonight. You're reading pages 1 and 2 of A&P by John Updike. So the first thing I'm going to do in my annotation is look at the title and the author's name. So it's A&P. And I know that A&P is a grocery store, but I'm wondering, is it taking place there? So my annotation is setting. Does it equal the grocery store? Next, I'm going to read the first sentence. In walks these three girls in nothing but bathing suits. Okay, I'm going to keep reading. I'm in the third checkout slot with my back to the door, so I don't see them until they're over by the bread. I'm going to stop here because I know something already. There's a first-person narrator, and he works at the A&P. That's who's telling the story. The one that caught my eye first was the one in the plaid green two-piece, so he's looking at one of the girls. She was a chunky kid with a good tan and a sweet, broad, soft-looking can with those two crescents of white just under it, where the sun never seems to hit at the top of the back of her legs. He's distracted by the girls, so I'm going to annotate that because he works there, but he's distracted by the girls. Okay. I stood there with my hand on a box of hi-ho crackers, trying to remember if I rang it up or not. I ring it up again, and the customer starts giving me hell. She's one of these cash register watchers, a witch about 50 with rouge on her cheekbones and no eyebrows, and I know it made her day to trip me up. She'd been watching cash registers 40 years and probably never seen a mistake before. So I'm going to annotate here because we get a lot of the narrator's attitude. Narrator resents the witches, and that seems like a key word. I would even highlight that in a different color. The witches that are the customers who make him feel inferior by catching his mistakes. So we get a sense of this author or this narrator's attitude towards his job. The narrator resents the witches that are the customers who make him feel inferior by catching his mistakes. And that annotation goes for these two sentences. So what I'm asking you to do tonight is to continue reading and annotating, working through your initial understanding, but also making those personal connections, examining author's craft, asking good questions and working through your process, and making those connections between details. We'll take a look at your annotations tomorrow and discuss the beginning part of the story. So please be sure you come to class with this completed. Good luck!